Struck first at the Winter Nationals. Pat Austin, in his first full year in the Top Fuel ranks, won the Motorcraft Nationals in Phoenix and is third in points. What a great racing future this man has. It was Joe Amato on top at the Slick 50 Nationals. The four-time Winston champ has his work cut out for him, fending off a talented field of fuelers on his way to a possible fifth title. It was an Eddie Hill tour de force at the Gator Nationals. That March day full of 480s will be remembered for a long time. At the Southern Nationals, it was the Snake, Don Prudhomme, striking with precision at a tough field to take the fifth event in the series. And when Corey McLenithan needed a win just to make it to the next race, he did what he had to do. We'll see him today again trying to slay the Giants. The National Hot Rod Association presents Championship Drag Racing on ESPN Speed World. The NHRA, the world's largest motorsports sanctioning body, showcasing speeds in excess of 300 miles an hour and traveling the quarter mile in less than 5 seconds. Championship Drag Racing from the NHRA. Today, the $18 million 18-event Winston Championship Drag Racing Series stops at one of this sport's fabled venues, National Trail Raceway in Columbus, Ohio, for coverage of professional competition at the 28th Annual Oldsmobile Springnationals. On a hot and humid day in central Ohio, it's time for the 28th Annual Oldsmobile Spring Nationals. Hi, everybody. I'm Dave McClellan, and I'm located in the pit area on Top Fuel Row, along with literally thousands of fans that have jammed into National Trail Raceway. Along this row are the pit areas of the 6 winners you have already met. But there are 2 other racers that have a strong possibility of breaking into the win column. One is Ed McCulloch, and the other is Mike Brotherton at the wheel of Darrell Gwynn's car. In Pro Stock, the story is a racer who is enjoying a bit of a resurgence after a rather long drought. But there's another side to that story. A war of words is being played out in the media between that racer and his strongest competitor. For more on that, here's my good friend, Steve Evans.
Well, David, that Pro Stock driver with a tremendous resurgence in performance is, of course, this man, 10-time Winston Pro Stock champion Bob Glidden. Bob, you've not only been strong on the racetrack, but with the media as well. You had some rather, distinct things to say about your rival Warren Johnson, the Olds driver, to the media the other day, and they copied it all down, too, buddy.
Well, you know, at the other end of the track, Warren's always jumping out of his car and running off at the mouth, and I'm just fed up with his stuff. He's just a smart aleck, and I'm just fed up with it.
Well, Bob doesn't beat around the bush, does he? A few minutes ago, I got Warren's side of this.
Well, you know, Bob's got the right to dislike anybody he wants. You know, I mean, this is a free country, so he can do what he wants. The only thing that concerns me, he's making statements in the paper that are out-and-out lies, and that's the part that concerns me. But as far as his personal feelings, that he's got a right to that.
Lies in what way?
Well, he said I made some statements at the other end, which were complete fabrications on his own part, and that's the only part that is I'm not concerned about personally. But it's derogatory to the sport. That's what my main concern is.
Well, Bob Glidden has a whole new look this year, a brand new crew, and it is rather apparent that he has a new attitude towards his competition. The 1992 NHRA Oldsmobile Spring Nationals is being brought to you by Oldsmobile, the power of intelligent engineering. And by Goodyear, #1 in tires. And by Budweiser, the king of beers. With that clean, crisp, cold taste, nothing beats a Bud. The Top Fuel story from Columbus, coming up next. Without a doubt, the best racing story here at the Oldsmobile Spring Nationals is Top Fuel Eliminator, where we have already seen Corey McLenithan establish a new track record. In fact, he is thus far showing the dominance that carried him to victory at the Mid-South Nationals at Memphis. The result of that victory at the Mid-South Nationals moved Corey Mack into the #5 spot in the Winston Points chase coming into Columbus. Kenny Bernstein's first, Joe Amato second, then Pat Austin, and Mike Brotherton #4. Joe Amato qualified #1 at this event with a 4.974 elapsed time. But he saw that mark disappear in round number 1 of racing as Corey McLenithan established low ET of the event and the quickest time ever at Columbus. His competition was to have been Danielle DePorter at the wheel of Paul Smith's car, but mechanical problems put her out of competition, and Corey McLenithan blasted out a 493. Steve was at the far end to talk with him.
Corey, how does it feel to drive probably the most competitive car in Top Fuel? 493.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, I don't kid.
I'm sure glad you don't, boy. I'll tell you, man. Jimmy Prock, Ted Fashing, Billy, Toe, the whole bunch, man. The Mac Attack Top Fuelers just coming around. Quaker State, I got to thank everybody that's had their hands in this deal. I'm just lucky to drive this sucker. I'll tell you, I try as hard as I can to do my job. And to be one of the most competitive cars around, the likes of Don Perdome and Eddie Hill and everybody else, I'm just ecstatic.
Go get him, bud. Corey McLenithan, with that first round victory, moved even closer to the leaders in the Winston points chase. Pat Austin came into this race in the number 3 spot. His competition in the first round was the points leader, Kenny Bernstein. One thing you never do in NHRA Winston Top Fuel Racing is underestimate your competition, and that is just what happened with the Budweiser King. Kenny came to the line in round number 1, the number 7 qualifier. He had the lane choice with a 5:05 elapsed time. Meantime, the best that Pat Austin could muster after 4 qualifying sessions was a 5:08. But come race day, things can change, and they did in the first round. Both drivers got nearly identical reaction times, but the difference between the 496 by Pat Austin to the 505 by Bernstein was obvious.
Just beating those guys is great. You know, the World Championship is starting to take shape, and those guys are out ahead, and they're running good. I just got to take credit out for my guys to get this car figured out. And to just win a race like that, I hope we can win 3 more and get where we want to be by the day's end.
Looks like you're back.
Hey, great. Woo!
Well, Kenny, after what we saw in qualifying, that kind of a number, 496 from Austin, a bit unexpected.
Well, to some extent, but you know they've got the talent over there to do that, and they can put it on you any time. And we thought about it all morning, and we knew they could do that. They ran 497 the first round in Memphis, so anything can happen. We just need to push on the Budweiser King a little harder.
See you soon.
Okay.
A costly round 1 loss for Bernstein at Columbus. Going into the round number 2 of Top Fuel Eliminator, it looked like this. Corey McLenithan up against Pat Austin, while 2 veterans, Eddie Hill and Connie Coletta, squared off. Hill in the Pennzoil dragster had qualified 3rd at a fine 5:01, while Coletta's best was good for number 11, and that was a time of a 5:09. Like Pat Austin, Connie surprised everyone in round number 1 when he blasted out a 498 to put away Doug Herbert. That gave the Coletta Flying Services team the lane choice in round number 2 competition. Hill is still looking to regain that 480 performance that took him to the national record and a victory down at the Gator Nationals earlier this season, while Connie was just looking to go a couple of rounds. The Pennzoil car up in smoke as Coletta streaked across the finish line, the victor.
With the sun out now, probably the smartest thing this man did was back off of that 4-second performance from round 1 to a 5:07 and get here first.
It's just what we did.
How'd you do it?
We just took the clutch timer away from it a little bit so it wasn't so aggressive.
Don't back the motor up at all. Leave it alone.
Leave it alone.
What can we expect the rest of the day?
I don't know.
I don't either.
We'll just sit and wait and see, Steve.
Okay, see you then.
Yep.
Never let it be said that Connie Coletta does not have a good time. In the second round, it was the battle of the young lions. Corey McLenithan, fresh off of his new track record, 493, against the 4-second runner of Pat Austin. Austin had the 496, remember, when he put away the points leader, Kenny Bernstein, but the quicker time by McLenithan gave him the lane choice, and it certainly appeared to be important in round number 2 as the Castrol car up in smoke. Another 4-second elapsed time by McLenithan. He notched a 499 at top speed of the meet, 291 miles an hour. The remainder of the second round ladder looked like this. Joe Amato against Mike Brotherton. Don Prudhomme raced Ed McCulloch. The Skull Bandit had qualified 4th at a 5:03, got close to the 4-second range with a 5:01 victory in round number 1 over Robert Reel. Ed McCulloch, though, jumped up from his qualifying time. His first round victory over Pat Dakin notched him a 495. That gave him lane choice in the second round. He picked the lane nearest the camera, Then the McDonald's dragster went up in smoke, and Prudhomme made a major improvement, 496 and 283 miles an hour to advance him to the semifinals. Michael Brotherton at the wheel of Darrell Gwynn's Coors Light car had qualified 9th, and he also had a major improvement in the first round when he ran 497. Joe Amato, the #1 qualifier, had a 507 in his first round victory. That lost him lane choice, but he responded with a giant advantage off the starting line, more than a 1/10 of a second. Brotherton smoked the tires instantly. What did it look like from Joe Amato's perspective? We took a ride.
It's gotten a lot hotter since this morning, since we all ran the 4-second runs, and just trying to decide what to do. And the longer the delays came, the more we just tried to do. And Tim Richards is a master at these slippery tracks. Let's hope he can continue.
2 more rounds.
With 2 more 100 points we picked up on the points leader. That's what it's all about here, trying to win the Winston World Championship.
And with Bernstein out of competition, Amato narrowing that gap. That set up the pairings for the Final Four. Corey McLenithan against Connie Coletta. Corey Mack has the lane choice. And the other pair, Joe Amato and Don Prudhomme, the Snake, picking his lane. Back in the Top Fuel pit area, the engine is running in Don Prudhomme's Skull Bandit. He's getting set for that semifinal race with Joe Amato. We'll be featuring that action when we come back. And into National Trail Raceway in one of the biggest crowds ever to witness a Spring Nationals event. Connie Coletta and Corey McLenithan, the first pair coming to the starting line as we are in the semifinals of Top Fuel Racing. McLenithan has the lane choice. His 499 that we saw just a few moments ago gave him the advantage over the 507 by Coletta. But as Connie pointed out, they had backed the car down off of the 4-second performance they logged in round #1, trying to get a hold of this racetrack. Corey McLenithan with a wave to the crowd. Earlier, Steve had a chance to stop by the Coletta Flying Service pit area and reminisce just a bit with Connie Coletta.
You historians out there will remember the last time Connie Coletta won a national event was right here at Columbus, Ohio, back in 1986, in kind of a strange final, Connie, against Joe Amato. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I sure do. We pulled up the starting line, did a burnout, and backed on up, and I stepped on the throttle when the light turned green, and Joe just kept on sitting there. And after a month or so, they admitted to the fact they forgot to put oil in the motor.
So it had no oil pressure.
No oil pressure.
Now, do you realize you're the only one that can keep the streak of non-repeat winners alive? Everybody else in the Final Four has won.
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Well, can you do anything about it?
We're going to try. I mean, that's all you can do in this game. Maybe a little bit of luck, and it might happen.
We'll be watching. Thanks.
Okay, Steve.
While we talk about the lane choice, it may not be so much the condition of the racetrack as it is the combination in the race cars. If you'll recall, in both round 1 and 2, we watched a lot of cars smoke in both lanes of the track. So with Corey Mack, he just had to kind of toss a coin. He selected the lane nearest the camera. And McLenithan falling off in performance, and Coletta moves to the finals. His crew absolutely overjoyed. His elapsed time 5:04, 276 miles an hour. Corey Mack fell off to a 5:22. Something obviously going wrong in McLenithan's car. Our next pair firing up on the starting line. Here is Joe Amato in the Team Valvoline car. He knows that if he can take a victory here, he gets even 200 more points closer to the Kenny Bernstein. Don Prudhomme is on a roll. The Skull Bandit won at Atlanta just about a month ago. On board with Joe Amato as he does his burnout. The camera mounted high atop the wing. At the far end, here's Steve.
Well, all in all, Connie, I'd say things are working out rather well today.
How good that run?
5:04.
Okay. It's there. I win. I don't know what else to say.
In fact, here's Corey Mack. Corey, come on in here. Your car fell way off.
We fell way off. When I stepped on the throttle, I could tell she just wasn't moving. But then you would go around me, you old son of a gun, I'll tell you. Man.
I said this thing almost found another 100 horsepower, too.
I hope you win, bud. Congratulations.
No more need be said except good luck in the final.
Thank you.
Steve, I don't think Connie's enjoyed himself quite as much since maybe back in 1986 when he won this race. Amato in the near lane. Prudhomme in the far lane. The lane choice here goes to the Snake. And as I noted a few moments ago, the track is probably pretty equal. McLenithan took the near lane, and Prudhomme selected the far side of the track. Both drivers staging very carefully. Look on the right-hand side of your screen. Prudhomme is out in front, and Prudhomme defeats Amato to go to the finals to race Connie Coletta. Prudhomme's elapsed time, 4:96 at 2:78. Amato's losing time of 4:98 at 2:88, only 28 thousandths of a second. The margin of victory for Prudhomme. This was the first time in history that Columbus and National Trail Raceway had seen side-by-side 4-second elapsed times. Prudhomme just drove away from Amato. Even though Amato had the faster speed, Prudhomme had pulled well ahead in the middle of the race course. There's the difference at the finish line. The Snake, the winner. That sets up the finals between two veterans, and don't count Coletta out. He has run in the fours. He doesn't have lane choice. Prudhomme ran in the fours in the semis, giving him the pick in the finals.
Don, when you left your trailer, I saw the look of a hungry snake. You were coiled. You were ready.
Well, yeah, I sure was. I want to race him real bad, and we like to win this race real bad. And you forget how old you are sometimes. And
you like to beat Amato?
Yeah, I like to beat Amato. Of course, I like to beat him all. He's a great guy, Joe. We're good friends, and I'm just glad the Skull Bandit wins car is performing here like it should.
That was a heck of a race, a 96 to a 98. I don't know if you saw him or not, but
yeah, I saw him. I saw him a little bit there. Yeah, he's a good competitor, man.
So Amato, a great race.
Yeah, he's picking on me here all the time. Here, I feel like I'm snake bit, but we'll get him. Don's a good guy. We had a good race there.
Yeah.
Look out for Coletta. You don't think he'll hop that thing up, do you?
Yeah, that old man will be tough. Trust me.
Old man, he's only 3 years older than Prudhomme. The Pro Stock story coming up next. Of the words in Pro Stock, well, here is the other half of the battle. And Warren Johnson has been doing a whole lot more than talking. His performances over the last couple of races have moved him even closer to the leader, Jerry Ekman. Scott Jeffreyon came into Columbus third, Mark Powick fourth, Larry Morgan fifth, and by the way, Bob Glidden is number 9 in the point standings. In the first round of competition, Frank Iaconio and his Oldsmobile was the challenger to Warren Johnson and the AC Delco Olds. Iaconio had qualified 13th at a 7:33, while Warren Johnson had qualified 4th at a 7:28. But remember, Bob Glidden was the #1 qualifier with the quickest time of the meet thus far at a 7:25. Iaconio had problems right off the line. Johnson thundered down track to a 7:25, but it was 0.02 of a second slower than Glidden.
Warren, I think you just got Mr. Glidden's attention with a 7:25, low elapsed time of eliminations, a big speed, 191.
Well, the run, except for the starting line, was a pretty clean run. I felt it'd probably run a 26 this afternoon. We still got some work to do.
What do you think the Ford can run here?
Well, obviously, I picked up. I'm sure Bob will pick up a little bit, too. I'm sure he'll probably run somewhere around 24, 25 also. Be surprised me if he runs any quicker than that.
This could be quite a duel before the day's over.
Well, we're not the only two cars out here. You have to remember that.
There may be other cars, but I guarantee you everybody was watching WJ and Bob Glidden, the Motorcraft Probe, the leader in qualifying. His first round competition was the Oldsmobile of John Noble. Noble had qualified in the number 16 spot. Glidden had just watched that 7:25 by Warren Johnson, knowing that the Oldsmobile was picking up in performance. Glidden had to try. Noble got the advantage off the starting line, but the Ford of Glidden pulled away in the middle of the race course. His elapsed time only a 7:29.
I don't know. I think we run Ricky Smith next round. It's a while before we get to Johnson, so we'll have to pick something up before we get to that point.
Is it hard not to look ahead to that, though? There's been so much said.
No, not at all. I'm concerned about the next round. I was concerned about running John Noble. I wasn't concerned about Johnson, and I think we run Ricky Smith next round, and I don't know why we made such a terrible run, but we'll look at the computer and look at things when we get back.
Not only did he have to find some performance out of the Ford, Glidden also had to work on reaction times. It was not very good. Glidden against Smith in round number 2, Johnson against Ekman in round number 2. Should they win, Johnson and Glidden would square off in the semifinals. Remember, I talked about Glidden's poor performance at the starting line in round number 1? Well, Ricky Smith is the king of reaction times. His STP Pontiac did not have the lane choice in round number 2 as Glidden brought the Motorcraft Ford Probe to the starting line in the far lane. Let's watch this one in slow motion. Look at the reaction time advantage gained by Smith in the near lane. And that right there was the margin of victory at the finish line. Glidden actually covered the quarter mile much quicker. He ran a 7:31 at over 189 miles an hour, trying to gain back the time that he gave away at the starting line. Ricky Smith, 7:36, won this race. There are the figures, 61 thousandths of a second different in reaction time. Glidden was able to run 49 thousandths quicker. That still leaves, even with my mathematics, 12 thousandths of a second, the margin of victory to Ricky Smith.
Well, Bob, I know this isn't how you wanted this day to end, but as you said earlier, he's awful sharp off the mark, and he got you a little bit.
Yeah, you got to worry about each round as you go. And, we didn't start out well the first round. I don't know what happened then. I don't think we made a very good run.
No, your 7:31 got beat by his 7:36.
That's really bad. Thanks.
Steve, that's kind of the story of Bob Glidden's season thus far, just on the wrong side of a little bit. For Jerry Ekman in the Pennzoil Pontiac, round number 2 at Columbus could well be one of the most important races of the year. His competition was the guy that is hot on his heels in the points chase, Warren Johnson. Ekman did not have the lane choice, did not have the performance advantage enjoyed by the AC Delco Oldsmobile, but it made no difference at the finish line. Problems for WJ in the far lane. He was forced to shut it off. Ekman won.
Well, any kind of a head-to-head confrontation between Warren Johnson and Bob Glidden will have to wait till another day, unfortunately.
Yeah, we just kind of tiptoed over the wrong edge on that thing. Like I said, this track's just a little bit tricky, and we were trying to be a little cautious, and apparently we just went over the edge just a little bit.
Were you afraid of losing control of the car or what?
It started shaking violently, so I just shut her down right away because I didn't, want to have anything. The race is basically lost when it starts to shake that hard that early.
See you in Montreal.
Okay, Steve.
Warren Johnson obviously disappointed. Jerry Ekman, though, poised to move forward in the Winston standings. The other side of the competition ladder for round number 2, so Scott Jeffrey on in the Mopar Parts Dodge against Jim Yates in his Pontiac, while Don Beverly brought his Oldsmobile to the starting line to race Larry Morgan and his Olds. The Castrol car owned by Bob Piniella had qualified in the number 6 spot with a 7.30, but in beating Billy Huff in the first round, Morgan had a major improvement to a 7.26. Here in round 2, Beverly had problems. Morgan advanced on, but with a very slow 7.43. In the last race of round number 2, Scott Jeffreyon brought the Dodge Daytona that had won the Winston Championship for 2 consecutive years to the line to race Jim Yates and his Dynamax Pontiac. Jeffrey on the number 2 qualifier at a 7.26 had his lane choice. He picked that far lane of the racetrack while Yates had handling problems here in the near lane, had to lift, and Jeffrey on took the win at a 7.31. That set up the final 4, where it will be a battle of Pontiacs as Jerry Ekman takes on Ricky Smith, and Ekman has the lane choice. The other pair finds the Oldsmobile Dodge battle with Morgan and Jeffrey on going off, Scott picking his lane. That semifinal action will be coming up next from Columbus. Cleveland, along with Steve Evans, and a quick check in Connie Coletta's pit area, finds normal maintenance going on. He's getting ready for the final round of Top Fuel against Don Prudhomme. That's coming up a little bit later on. Right now, we're in the semifinals of Pro Stock, and this is the STP Pontiac of Ricky Smith. You know that as Ricky goes through his burnout procedure, he's got to be psyching himself up for another of those super quick reaction times.
Ricky Smith has long been known as an assassin off of the starting line. He'd been in a little bit of a slump, but he's back this weekend big time. And Dr. Craig Warren of King, North Carolina, may be why. That's Ricky's optometrist. He detected astigmatism when Ricky had his eyes checked and designed this corrective lens. Now, you can see there's not a whole lot of magnification there, but Ricky says it's the difference between night and day when he puts them on. Now, he better be careful. He only has one pair. Some other Pro Stock driver might accidentally sit on these, knock them off the shelf, step on them.
I'm sure Jerry Ekman, the driver of the Pennzoil Pontiac, would have if he could have. Ekman coming to the line with the lane choice. Both drivers taking their time about staging. As they pull forward and light the second light at the top of the tree, it indicates to starter Buster Count that each driver is ready. Smith staging last. He's in and out first. But the whole shot, the advantage did not pay off this time. It was Jerry Ekman, 7:31 to a losing 7:33. 20 thousandths of a second was the margin of victory at the finish line. Here in instant replay, you can see that Jerry Ekman in the far lane did his job to perfection. He stayed with Ricky Smith off the starting line. Ricky only a 7/1000th of a second advantage or a hole shot, and that was certainly not enough to withstand the onslaught of performance that Ekman pulled out in the last eighth of a mile. 0.02 of a second difference between the two cars as far as elapsed time goes. 7:31 to a 7:33. There's the margin of victory.
7:31.
31, that's probably not too bad for this conditions. We'll see who we got to race now.
At least you left with him. No one else has today.
Yeah, I know. Ricky's been really sharp in the lights, and that's his forte, and I had to be on my toes.
Oldsmobile and Dodge, the other pair in the final four. That is Scott Jeffrey on in the Mopar Parts car on the far side. In the near lane, the Castrol car of Larry Morgan, and he has literally thousands of hometown fans rooting for him. Larry, hailing from that nearby town, the beautiful little city of Newark, has yet to win here at Columbus. Again, the drivers taking their time in the staging procedure because, as we have seen so often during this race, it is very difficult to overcome the advantage gained at the starting line. Look at the hole shot by Morgan. And Jeffrey on nowhere close at the finish line. 7:31 to a 7:33, but 0.2 of a second was the advantage gained by Morgan. He moves into the finals to race against Jerry Ekman. To put this in perspective, the advantage gained by Larry Morgan at the starting line, some 0.2 of a second. That means Scott Jeffreyon would have had to have run something around a 7:11 or lower to have a chance at beating Morgan. And of course, if you run that kind of time, you got yourself a new record. Nobody's ever done it. Morgan and Ekman in the finals. Jerry Ekman by just thousandths as the lane choice. Now to the far end of the track, and Steve.
Somebody yelled over, "Hey, Morgan, you won, but you don't have lane choice." And you said,
I don't care. I'm just happy to be here, buddy.
and you matched wheels with Ekman almost. Both of you ran 31.
That's okay. I figure, you know, we made a clutch change that time. We were very fortunate to get down that lane.
Well, the final could be a good starting line battle, huh?
Oh, I'm sure there will be one. You can bet I'm not giving up.
Whoever leaves first is able to win this race.
Steve, we've seen that all day long. Funny car action coming up next. Comments of Pro Stock and Top Fuel here at the Oldsmobile Spring Nationals, but believe me, the excitement is just as intense in the third professional category of funny car. Ask Chuck Etchells. He qualified #1 for the first time in his career. He ran a 5:23 in the process. Etchells is currently 10th in the Winston point standings. The field headed by John Force, the two-time champion. Cruz Pedregon second, Jim Epler third, Al Hoffman fourth, and Del Worship #5. But the big story performance-wise was in round #1, where Cruz Pedregon blasted out a 5:17 at over 288 as he was racing against Jim Epler, driving Johnny West, medal arrestor Dodge Daytona. All eyes were on the McDonald's Oldsmobile as this car streaked through the quarter mile, but their attention was quickly diverted to Jim Epler. As Cruz streaked down track to his track record-shattering 5:17 at over 288, Epler was literally on fire. He waited a while until he brought the parachutes out. They did not burn off. That helped slow the car as the safety safari arrived very quickly on the scene, hitting it with the firefighting compounds. Safety safari crew on the scene to help Epler out of the burning car. Steve had a chance to talk with him.
I feel fine. The fire went right out. Might have got a little bit of smoke, but I think I'm okay.
Good job at driving. Getting it stopped is the most important thing.
Yes, definitely the most important, but the guys are right on it and put the fire out, so I think we kept it to a minimum.
As always, a great job by the safety safari.
Epler was checked out by the emergency medical technicians and pronounced A-OK. In round #2, Cruz Pedregon, the 5:17 car against Tom Hoover, while John Force, the Winston points leader, raced his young opponent, Del Worship. Hoover, with the Scotch color print film Dodge Daytona, had qualified #7 with a 5.40 and defeated Jerry Caminito in the first round. He he had to be thinking about Pedregon's performance out of the McDonald's car. That 5:17 just blew away Etchel's low elapsed time. That's just what Tom Hoover did to his tires. He blew them off, while Pedregon, look at the time there. In round number 2, 5:21 at over 286 miles an hour to advance to the Final Four. Del Worsham and John Force had previously raced a total of 6 times. John Force and the Castrol Olds had won every matchup up until the second round here at Columbus. John Force may have been thinking a bit too much about Pedregon in those times as the Castrol Olds went up in smoke. Worsham crossed the finish line with a subpar 5:44, but he advanced to the semifinals, and John Force did not.
John, obviously overpowered the racetrack a bit. Were you trying to run the kind of numbers that Pedregon has been running? Did that have play any part in it at all?
Yeah, we did. We were watching the track first. We thought, pull it back a little bit, Steve, and then he ran that 21, so we thought it must be good. And you're looking at racing him next round and trying to get lane choice very, very crucial here. And we shot our shot and we missed it. But this is a new car, and it's done well since the crash at Memphis, so we're happy with it, and it'll come around.
Okay, John.
John's accident at Memphis cost him the car that had carried him to 2 national event wins thus far this year. The other side of the ladder found Chuck Etchells up against Whit Bazemore, while Al Hoffman's Dodge was matched against the Pontiac of Gordon Mineo. A big win by Whit Bazemore in round number 1 over Mark Oswald advanced him to the second round of competition, where he met up with the number 1 qualifier, Chuck Etchells. Now, Etchells already knew that his elapsed time record was long gone here at Columbus, but the Nobody Beats the Whiz Dodge was certainly the favorite in this match against Bazemore. Lane choice had gone to Etchells, and he hoped to use the near lane of the track, much the same as Pedregon had already done in running a low 5:20. But remember, Bazemore and the Fast Orange Ford Probe made it all the way to the finals at Memphis. It was not to be, though, in round number 2, as crew chief Maynard Yanks watched Chuck Etchells run a 5:28.
The car must have turned the tire just a little bit on us.
You're disappointed now with 5:28?
Little bit. Hoffman's, you have to pick Hoffman as the favorite here. I mean, they've been running real well, and, you got to watch those guys.
And he's an old pal.
Until we go to the starting line, yeah.
The blower drive service Dodge of Al Hoffman came into round number 2, the decided favorite. His competition, Gordon Mineo out of Rockwall, Texas. Gordon, coming back to the sport about a year and a half ago, has certainly left his mark. He's been able to run very, very well, but in round number 2, he left the starting line a hair too soon. The red light was showing, giving an automatic victory to Al Hoffman. That moved him to the semifinals, where his competition is Chuck Etchells, and Etchells, with his 5:28 in round 2, has the lane choice. Cruz Pedregon, not much doubt there. His 5:21 gives him the pick of lanes over Del Worsham. In the top fuel pit area, this is the crew on the Skoal Bandit of Don Prudhomme, hard at work preparing the car for the final round appearance against Connie Coletta. That action coming up just a little bit later. Pontiac, they're getting the car ready to meet Larry Morgan in the finals of Pro Stock Eliminator in an Oldsmobile versus Pontiac battle. I'd like to take a moment to invite you to become a member of a very special organization, the National Hot Rod Association. For just $48 a year, you can get 48 issues of National Dragster, a patch, pin, rule book, and a whole lot more. And if you order by calling the number on your screen, you'll get a free copy of Diamond P's home video, Drag Racing 91. Give a call today. Ed McCulloch, the top fuel half of the McDonald's racing team, looking on intently as Cruz Pedregon gets set to battle Del Worsham. The youngest funny car winner in NHRA history, Del Worsham, realizes that his opponent is another of the young rising stars of this sport. Cruz Pedregon is only 28 years old, and he has the distinction of driving not only the Nitro Funny car, but also a top fuel dragster, a top alcohol dragster, and a top alcohol funny car in his short career. While a race car has literally thousands of parts, racers today say there is one key to success.
Inside that bell housing, you can just see it through the inspection cover, the plate having been removed, is the clutch that is the secret to winning this race. You're looking at the Cruz Pedregon car, and no one is managing their clutch better. Now, at the back of the car, is where the adjustments are made as far as how that clutch locks up down an ever-changing racetrack. Right here, see these two little timers, and there's jets down inside these bodies. That controls how those springers are released and where the pressure is applied on the racetrack. They may change the timer a little bit as the track gets gooey to bring the power on later. As it gets better, they'll change them back to bring the power on earlier. It could be won or lost right here in Funny Car and Top Fuel.
And Pedregon's crew chief Larry Meyer has certainly been right on today. A 5:17 and a 5:21, the two quickest times ever here at National Trail Raceway. A tremendous race, and Pedregon pulls it out. The advantage at the starting line went to Del Worsham, but at the finish, a 5:29 by Pedregon gave him a 0.04 of a second margin of victory. Let's watch this one in replay. In the far lane, Del Worsham responded to the green light quicker, 25 thousandths. Keep that figure in mind as he pulled ahead of Cruz Pedregon. Then as the clutch in the McDonald's Oldsmobile began to come in, the power was applied and it was almost too much. He actually was hazing the tires, slipping the tires at the far end of the racetrack. His performance advantage, 29 thousandths of a second. There's the margin of victory.
That was one close automobile race.
Well, that was unbelievable. Del, what can I say? He's done a good job. He's it's been a while since I've been in these late rounds. I need to...
You saw him?
I saw his fender all the way, black fender. Scared the heck out of me, but McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Oldsmobile in the final.
Back at the starting line, the burnouts are completed. A final check in the far lane of Al Hoffman's car by his crew chief, Tom Anderson, while Chuck Etchels brings the nobody beats the whiz Dodge to the starting line. Etchels here has got to be considered the favorite based on performances, but Hoffman, winner at Memphis, is certainly on a streak. That's his wife, Helen, with her final check of the car. Lower drive service Dodge Daytona, the last to stage. He's set. Another close race, and again, the advantage at the starting line pays off. Al Hoffman picked up a big lead, held on for the victory. He ran a very creditable 5:28 at 2:73. The losing time for Etchels was 5:26. Hoffman's advantage in the far lane was 47 thousandths of a second, and try as he might, Chuck Etchels clawing away at that lead just could not make up the difference. As they neared the speed traps at the finish line, Etchels probably knew at this point the race was over, but he did not give up. By about a half a car length, Al Hoffman moves to the finals of Funny Car Eliminator. His competition is going to be Cruz Pedregon, and by that performance, Hoffman earned himself the choice of lanes.
Some fantastic driving won that one.
What was it?
Your 28 beat his 26.
Oh, well, it's about time. Tommy's been accusing me of being late all week, and I've been telling him it's been the car, and I said, fix that, and it'll work, and it did.
Well, everything worked together, obviously.
Right. Tommy's done. I just can't say enough about him. Race after race, he just always bails us out here, and he's done a great job on the car. BDS, Black Diamond, Dodge Daytona's flying again, and we're back.
You took the smile up at Pedregon's face when he heard you have lane choice.
Well, I've been in a few finals now and ain't lost one, so let's see if we can't hold our record again.
Trying to keep that string intact, Al Hoffman looking for yet another championship win. Work going on Cruz Pedregon's Oldsmobile, and look who's doing the work. That is Ed McCulloch, and look who's helping out. That is the president and chief executive officer of McDonald's Incorporated. That is Ed Renzi lending a helping hand to the Larry Minor race team. Meantime, on the starting line, we're ready for the finals in Pro Stock Eliminator, and it is a pair of Newark, Ohio residents. Larry Morgan, a native, Jerry Ekman, a California transplant. He and his partner Bill Orndorff moved the Pennzoil racing operation to the heartland of America just about a year and a half ago. The Castrol Oldsmobile of Larry Morgan gave away lane choice by only 7 thousandths of a second. On paper, this should be a very close race. Oldsmobile versus Pontiac, and Ekman has a great deal at stake here. Should he be able to pull out a victory, it would give him a commanding lead in the Winston points chase. Dale Ike, the engine builder for Jerry Ekman, looking on intently as both cars come into the staging beams. And And something goes wrong for Morgan. He is forced to shut off. Jerry Ekman takes the title, the all-important points. His elapsed time, 7:29 at 189 miles an hour. While we have been talking all day long about reaction times, in this case, it was identical to the thousandths of a second. As we watch in the replay, you see Morgan in the near lane having the difficulties, forcing him to lift, and Ekman streaked ahead to the finish line and taking the victory, which moves him out in front of Warren Johnson by a substantial margin. His elapsed time very safe and conservative at a 7:29, but this was a big victory, his third of the 1992 season for Jerry Ekman. Let's go to Steve.
What a season for Jerry Ekman as he pads his Winston points lead. You win in your adopted new little hometown. Life is good.
It certainly is. You know, we had a couple of hometown boys in the final, and I'll tell you, we went into a little slump mid-season. It looks like we're back. We got a tough team here. You know, it's not just me, it's the team. We don't always run the best, but my team gets this car down these tough conditions and tough tracks, and I'm so proud to drive this Pennzoil Pontiac. We're great to be here as a winner again.
Proud to be here with it.
Oh, I'm excited as can be, and I know my team is ecstatic.
Great job.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, that big win gives him a big lead, 1,052 points over his closest competitor, Warren Johnson. Scott Jeffrey on third. Morgan is fourth, and Don Beverly now number 5. The shot from high above gives you an idea of this huge crowd, but nobody's leaving. Nitro Finals coming up next. Al Hoffman giving his driver some fresh air, fanning the emergency escape hatch now, making a minor adjustment to the fuel injection system. Meantime, the preparations going on in the McDonald's Oldsmobile driven by Cruz Pedregon. While Pedregon's got quick elapsed time of the meet at a 5:17, he does not hold lane choice. The blower drive service Dodge of Al Hoffman, by just 5,000ths of a second, ran that much quicker in the previous round. That gave him the pick of lanes in the final. Bear in mind, though, the 5:17 and the 5:21 by Pedregon were both turned in the lane nearest the camera. Starter Buster Couch making a final check of both drivers. Hoffman rolling forward for the final stage beam. Pedregon doing the same. And a red light start for Cruz Pedregon. Al Hoffman is the winner for the second race in a row. His elapsed time, 5:31 at 263 miles an hour. And Cruz Pedregon did what no one expected. Red light at the start. The quick car of eliminations falling to a red light, a disqualification. You see the top bulb out on Hoffman's lane indicated a deep stage. That may have broken the concentration of Pedregon just enough to get him to leave a little bit early. Hoffman, one of the cagiest drivers in the business. Now they're starting the top fuel finalists. This is the Skull Bandit of Don Prudhomme. John Medlin, his crew chief, making a final check. Connie Coletta, the Coletta Flying Services Special. He is the car owner, the car driver, and the crew chief of record on that car. Don Prudhomme, the defending top fuel champion. In fact, Columbus a year ago was his first ever top fuel victory. Now he is trying to become the first repeat winner in Top Fuel Eliminator in this 1992 season. Let's go to Steve.
You know, the fact that you have never been defeated in a final round might have got to Pedregon a little bit. He red lighted.
Well, I don't plan on it. I think we kind of forced him into that. Maybe not, but
in what way?
Just the strategy that Tommy and I usually have and what we do up there, and little things work on different drivers. And I'm not saying we tried to beat them like that. You know, we come up there and I don't know what it run, but we tried to,
31.
We tried to repeat and run pretty good. But I'm just real happy for the BDS Dodge Daytona. It's done, an excellent job this year, especially, to win 2 in a row. I'm so happy for, Tommy, my wife Helen, the entire crew. Jeremy Lindsay has just been a tremendous help to us since we've hired him the beginning of the year. And he's doing the bottom end and hasn't missed one beat on it. And you can see that because very seldom we break anything.
Again, great job.
Thanks again, Steve. Thank you.
A bit of reshuffling in the Winston Point standings as John Force, who went out in round number 2, still leads, but Cruz Pedregon getting even closer. Al Hoffman solid in third, Del Worsham fourth, Jim Epler now number 5. For Connie Coletta, he has fond memories of this Columbus racetrack. It was his last major NHRA national event title, and that was back in 1986. Coletta in the near lane, Prudhomme in the far lane. And an explosion in Coletta's car. Prudhomme to the finish line and the champion. Don Prudhomme repeats in Top Fuel Eliminator. The Skull Bandits 498 at 283 miles an hour gives his crew something to celebrate. And for Connie Coletta, what a disappointment. The engine explosion breaking the blower drive belt. That's what's laying out on the racetrack. Watch in replay. Coletta, at the age of 54, got the whole shot on Prudhomme. He was headed off the starting line first until that happened. The blower explodes and puts him out of competition, while Prudhomme logs yet another 4-second elapsed time. An absolutely superb showing by Coletta. Unfortunately, mechanical gremlins got him.
In 219 national event starts, Don Prudhomme wins his 45th Nitro title. I know these things.
Well, you know, well, I'm tickled to death, especially racing my old pal Connie Coletta. It seemed like we did this in 1965 in match races, and they come up with each other in the final. It was tremendous. And he got a good start on me, by the way.
You knew he'd have that thing loaded. He'd put it on the moon if that's what it took.
Oh, yeah, you know Coletta, and so do I. I knew he'd be tough, and we're just trying to run our own race. But, you know, I really got to thank Skull and, you know, Wins and Pontiac and all the people that's helped us.
This will move you up to about 5th in the points.
It sure will, and we're really pleased with that. We needed it, and those Goodyear tires, man, ain't nothing like it.
Don Prudhomme, Oldsmobile Spring Nationals Top Fuel champ.
Well, Steve, as you said, that second victory of the season has moved Prudhomme into 5th in the Winston standings. Kenny Bernstein has watched his lead diminish as Joe Amato gets closer. Pat Austin 3rd, Corey McLenithan number 4, very tight amongst the top 5. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from Columbus. The 1991 NHRA Oldsmobile Spring Nationals has been brought to you by Oldsmobile, the power of intelligent engineering. And by Quaker State, the Big Q is one tough motor oil. And by Autolite Spark Plugs, guaranteed for 2 years no matter how far you go. Coverage of the NHRA Spring Nationals has been a presentation of Diamond P Sports in association with ESPN.